Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report, not only for this week, April 24th through 30th, but I'm actually going to do the month of May, too. There's not a real lot of stuff going on this week, just 3 things. So it was a perfect time to get May in because there's a couple really big things in May. And next week, we got that full moon lunar eclipse. So that'll take a lot of time out of next week's blog. So get a little head start and jump on May this week, too. But first of all, the Astrological Winds channel is a free service. It's a video blog that I do every week on YouTube, and it's also available on all kinds of podcasts. The link is available on Instagram too. You just look up Astrological Winds channel. But if you do have a YouTube account, become a follower, please. And then turn on your notifications, and you'll know every week when I post the blog. Also, it is a free service, so please pass the blog along to someone else you know who might be interested in astrology. And remember, that's half the world at this point who has an interest in belief in astrology. So there's a lot of people in your contacts, and if you've already done it, somebody else, find someone else that you can do it to. And if you'd like to give a donation to the blog, that's always helpful. The giving economy, helping each other out with our best talents is really the way the age of Aquarius should go. I have a Venmo handle. It's at Matthew with 2 T's. Hyphen in the middle, Lawton, Lauten. So anyway, and the best way you can actually really support me, though, is astrology is my profession. I am a professional astrologer. Yes, I've been doing readings for over 20 years. So if you need some kind of professional reading, give me an email, or if you know someone else that does, drop me an email. We can talk about how we can set that up. And that's at MATTHUE823 at gmail.com. That's MATTHUE823 at gmail.com. And I'll get into more details with contact stuff later on at the end of the blog. I want to start getting into this. Remember, try to remind you guys every week. I know there's a lot of you out there that have an interest in astrology, not very much knowledge. Don't get caught up in the astrological lingo that I introduce each part with. Don't get latched on that and then forget to hear what the actual interpretation of that energy is, or how those energies are combining very uniquely each week. And that way you're going to be more aware of what the energy is. Doesn't really matter why it's happening. You want to just know what that energy is so that you can use it well. And of course, I'm always going to mention that stuff because most of the people who watch the blog do have some knowledge of astrology and are curious about why I'm mentioning that stuff. But don't get hung up and lose the message, is my point. All right, so this week, the 24th through the 30th, we're in the middle of Mercury retrograde, and I'm sure you guys are having some of those experiences. I sure have. It was a pretty funny day the other day when I went out the first day of Mercury retrograde, watching a lot of computer systems crash here and there in businesses and stuff, but I'm sure we have all got our own personal stories for that. But there's 3 things going on this week that I wanted to mention, and a couple of them are really good. One of them is definitely challenging. Tuesday, tomorrow, there's 2 really interesting sextiles that should work very well together. The sun is sextiling Saturn, and Venus is sextiling Chiron. And I really think together, this is wanting to build solid, reliable relationships, like close-knit working group kind of stuff. It's the ability of each person to use their talent in a situation that's very practical, grounded, responsible, and doing what they do best in relation to a group thing. And so therefore getting personal satisfaction out of that, getting like a healing energy to us, because our talents are being used correctly and they're being, recognized for the value they have in the practical world. And so this is really about a great early part of this week, Monday through Wednesday, to form opportunities to form great working units is a good way to say it. This is all about wanting to be reliable in relationships, solid, steady. So it's great for business type stuff, great for projects that you're working on together with people. And it brings a lot of, on the individual level, each of us can have a great focus and concentration and really show the ability that we have. And so it's all about, it's definitely on the conservative side emotionally. This is more about like inner satisfaction and being able to want to really live up to our duties and show the world what we can do and help bring a foundation, a reliable thing. So that's why it's really best worked. And each of us, when we have those individual talents, we're each an expert at something. So this is where we all get to give and take on that level too. Like we get to give expert advice in the things that we're great at and get expert advice within those working units from the other people where they're better at certain things. So really harmonious working unit is a good way to think of those first 3 days this week. Now on Thursday, we have the challenge of the week. Mars is square Chiron exact. Now the first thing I want to say about that is we have to be really careful about our health this week. Mars and Chiron, first of all, it can cause, we can react or act sometimes out of anger and irritability with Mars Chiron, and that can set up injury and accident from moving too fast and physical bodily injury or stress or strain. But it also can lower the ability of the body to even fight off disease or illness or allergies or sensitivities and, sore muscles, blood issues, things like that are all, things that can Mars square Chiron can bring up. But also, if not health related, usually I mentioned it can bring some anger and irritability up. And the main reason for that is we see, situations are blocked right now from us being able to effectively act the way we want to. And yet we want to act anyway. So we kind of cause a lot of our own tension and stress by trying to push through things that are blocked or restricted right now and still find a way around them. So we can get really kind of aggro in doing that and project anger out towards others or just situations or life in general. And so it's we're seeking some kind of adaptability, but a lot of it is very impulsive. And especially when you look at the zodiac signs these two are in right now, Mars in Cancer, very defensive in the fall, feeling insecure most of the time, circling the wagons. And then we have Chiron in Aries, which is that Aries sign of just, that aggressive, angry energy that when it's being held back. So this is the interesting challenge of the week is not trying to, react to this so strongly that we hurt ourselves even more or we throw our balance off even more. And it's kind of just allowing a steady flow of energy out would be better. And we get opportunities on the weekend when we have on Saturday an exact Mars sextile Uranus. This is the desire to have new experiences, to have new connections with others, to take new actions, to bring more in, to excite ourselves. It's definitely freedom loving and independent, but it respects that in other people too. So it's all kind of feeling that kind of together. But what it does is it gives us short bursts of physical energy where we can get a lot of things done in a real condensed or short amount of time. So next weekend is really valuable for that. It's a really good weekend to, look for new experiences, connect with new people, and, get this vitality, this energy, this charge out of that, of pushing forward very quickly with something and moving ahead. And this is just good for our personal growth and our evolution. So a really interesting week for the most part, some valuable stuff. But like I said, that Mercury, we're obviously in the middle of Mercury retrograde too, so we want to remember that. So now I'm going to go to May, and May's got some interesting stuff going on, guys. So that's why I'm glad I can get to this week and spend a little time on this before next week when we get that lunar eclipse full moon. So right away in May, very first day, May 1st, the retrograde season continues. Now you remember Mercury was the first planet that went retrograde in months, when it went retrograde last week on the 21st, and it will be retrograde to the 12th. But Pluto is going to begin its long retrograde sojourn, which is over 5 months usually. It's 5.5 months. Pluto moves very slowly. So it's going to move on May 1st. It's going to go retrograde at 1 degree Aquarius, basically. And then it will go back to Capricorn on June 12th and remain in Capricorn the rest of this year, all the way until January 21st of next year, 2024. So the last vestiges of Capricorn. So we only got to dip into the waters of Aquarius for about 10 weeks with this Pluto, and it's going to go back into that Capricorn energy, and it means it's got some unfinished business. It's back to that critical degree. It's only gonna retrograde back on October 10th to about 28 degrees. So it's very slow retrograde, and it's going to it's really the last vestiges of all the stuff, the last 20 years that's been exposed. And remember, Pluto's about, societal transformation. So it's all about all the structures that we've watched in the last 20 years kind of decay and fall apart and are in need of reformation. It's kind of like the birds are coming home to roost now. And if just some interesting stuff in that too. And, just as an example in the world again, you had the last administration, the Trump administration in the United States. Power, Pluto, politicians, business leaders, bankers, big financiers, all Pluto people. And this is all the stuff we've seen in the last 20 years, how these political leaders, these business leaders, these religious leaders all have shadow, dirty stuff, all trying to hold on to tradition, Capricorn, and keep the power base and the structure as it is. And yet, as we go into the age of Aquarius, that's all required to fall asunder and fall apart, and Pluto to reform it out of the ashes into something new. So, when we go back to that 29 degrees, I'm going to go back to, like I said, about the Trump administration. They were in power during, a chunk of those 20 years. And a lot of the stuff they did was very Plutonian things, power grab things, they trying to shake up power structure. And notice now how, all the things that, were created then, the birds are coming home to roost. He has to sit in all these trials and accusations and committees, and all his people have to, because they're having to deal with the last degree, the aftermath of their time in power. So that's just an analogy of what Pluto in this 29th, these last 2 degrees of Capricorn for the most of the rest of this year after it goes retrograde are going to do. It's the last vestiges in your life of the last 20 years that you've seen where you need to make reformation in your life, in the Capricorn kind of things, the structures of your life, maybe having to do with career a lot of times, or the way you do things. But this is like when, a lot of physical things are going to completely fall asunder and fall apart. And they, if they haven't been reformed, they need to be now, or they're going to just basically destruct and go out. So this is going to be a really interesting time period on a personal level during the retrograde part till October. We want to really take it in, take a last look at all this stuff that we want to get rid of, that we want to purge out of our life, structures that aren't working anymore, forms that aren't working anymore. And that's on abstract and concrete levels. It's an earth thing. So there's a lot of physical things that is too. That could be some of your stuff, your physical stuff that you need to get rid of or move on from. And then in society, it's just all that too. All the structures and forms of society, the way society is run abstractly and concretely. We can see how structure is falling apart, infrastructure falling apart physically, government falling apart abstractly, the ideas of how we run government. So those are just examples of this energy, and we really need to reflect on that until the 10th, and then we'll have 3 last months of direct energy through the last 2 degrees of Cap at the end of the year and into January before we move full on into Aquarius. Okay, the second thing for May 5th, and I'm going to talk about this a lot more in detail next week, so I'm not going to get into it, but it's our second eclipse of the eclipse season. Remember, there's 2 eclipse seasons every year. Right now, Taurus, Scorpio is where the nodes are. So Taurus, Scorpio time is where we're having eclipse seasons this year. And this next one is a full moon. So it's a lunar eclipse. It's a full moon in Scorpio on May 5th. And it's exactly at another critical degree, you guys. I can't believe how much stuff is happening at critical degrees. This one is at 15 degrees of Scorpio. And why is that a critical degree? It's the exact middle degree of each quarter. 15 degrees of the fixed signs is like the cross-quarter days in the old pagan calendar. So like Beltane is May 1st, right? Cross-quarter day, the midday of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And that is what a 15-degree fixed sign is like. It is a cross-quarter time. And so with Beltane energy, we're bringing in the energy of union and harmony. And that's very interesting on this relationship axis of Taurus and Scorpio. Can we some way find that in this really interesting alignment? And I'll talk a lot more about this next week. And interestingly enough, too, that full moon will actually be opposite Mercury retrograde, too. And so that's the next thing. May 14th, Mercury goes direct at 6 degrees Taurus. It slid back about 10 degrees during its retrograde phase. So it'll go back to 16 degrees of Taurus on June 1st, and we'll be out of shadow then. So we'll have about 2 weeks of shadow period. But we'll start to see things start to move forward right around the 14th. We'll get that heavy last Mercury retrograde dose when the planet actually changes direction. And then we'll start to see over the next week or two, travel, communication, information issues start to straighten out again. And like I said, when I talked about when Mercury went retrograde in Taurus a couple weeks ago or last week, it'll be a time when all that stuff we're thinking about and we're like looking at everything very slowly and methodically before we make a decision internally during the Mercury retrograde period. Those will be the 2 weeks where we can start to bring that stuff out, where we're going to be like, okay, well, this is the decision I've made, and we should be feeling really solid and grounded about those decisions at this point. And once again, a lot of them may have to do with, Taurian stuff, money, assets, things like that, that are definitely part of a lot of our stress factor in the world right now with the way the economy has been. So very interesting. But now the biggest thing that goes on in June. Jupiter goes into Taurus on May 16th for 1 year. Okay? So the time in Aries is over. It didn't really spend a lot of time in Aries. If you guys remember, it spent 5 months, then it had that long retrograde where it went back into Pisces for a while. And then it went back into Aries earlier this year and really sped through it again. So May 16th, it'll go into Taurus, and it'll actually stay in Taurus for a year. May 26th of next year. So we got a solid full year of Jupiter in Taurus. Now, the first thing I want you to remember is Jupiter is a social planet. It's one of the 2 social planets. So we see a lot of the things when Jupiter changes signs every year played out in society, okay? And so when Jupiter goes into Taurus, not a lot of dignity there, really. And what happens is, it actually makes Jupiter more conservative. Jupiter is usually more expansive, growth-oriented, freedom-seeking, independent, tolerant. Jupiter goes into Taurus, it kind of just takes a little bit of a step back. I think we'll watch society kind of on a social and cultural level get a little bit on the conservative side. And it more likely has a lot to do with those Taurian things that I just mentioned before. Banking, commerce, international corporation stuff, that international banking, the economy in general, and how that relates to us individually is our own personal material security. So when Jupiter goes into Taurus, I think we're going to get a lot more conservative during this year. We may be forced to be more conservative. Rice exports, rice growth, 20% down this year. Wheat exports stuck in Russia and the Ukraine right now because the European Union won't let them over the border. So, we're seeing things where, those basic things that Taurus represents, the material needs that we need for survival, are not in a reliable position that Taurus really wants. So what that does is it gets us more conservative. Will get us conservative individually. It will get us conservative socially and culturally. So, somehow or another, things, at that point slow down, and people, really find a lot of, their value and their security comes in having tactile things. So it's their money, their assets, their property, the objects that they can hold on to, even their heritage, definitely their heritage with Taurus on the Taurus Scorpio axis. It has a lot to do with that. And remember, Taurus is really interesting too. So if that stability is found either individually or socially, then generosity comes out of that. Tolerance comes out of that. People are willing to, be helpful to one another and stabilize and make sure that people are getting the things they need. But if they're feeling like they're not, they can really start to circle the wagons and really start to divide and conquer, so to speak, and create even enemy that, and push away a lot of the emotional stuff, try to cover it up with creature comfort type stuff. So we can do that not only individually, but as a society too. Like if a society is feeling threatened materially, it can really get patriotic and defensive and warlike. So we have to be very, very, very aware of that And, and that, there's this possessive energy, this trying to hold on, to what, has worked for us in the past. And, even like trying to just, eliminate emotions from the equations of the decisions we're making. Okay. And then the very next day, because Pluto is at that first degree of Aquarius, it's in between 0 and 1, and already going backwards, so getting closer to going back to Capricorn, we get the immediate square of Jupiter square Pluto. Now, it's only a one-hit square, but I got to tell you guys, it's a powerful square to have right now, the way society is right now, because it's all about power. It's all about ambition. It's all about blind power and ego grab. So it can create a lot of conflict. Once again, Jupiter, a social planet. Pluto, one of the outer transformational planets. When these two get together, you see a lot of things can go on politically with those in power. Those in power trying to make power grabs. They can create a lot of conflict between leaders in this kind of energy. So it's a very sensitive time. It's a time where we noticed what has to be rebuilt, what has to be reformed, what has to be redone. There can be a lot of things that are grabbing our attention for that. And so this is a time where that, ambition, when you think about it on a personal level, that's the same thing. We're all in power somewhere. So we may gain some authority, we may gain some power, we may gain some control in the places where we have power. Just like politicians and leaders of business and religion and stuff like that all have power. Now, what's interesting about this one too socially is Jupiter rules the courts, actually. So let's take an issue again. Abortion in the United States right now. Hot fire issue. Hot fire that I think people realize, it affected our last elections even, and it's probably going to affect our next one. Once again, old Capricorn stuff in the courts right now, still trying to do things the old way, and the Aquarian energy of the collective is having a really hard time with that. And the abortion thing is really at the top of that in the United States right now. This Jupiter square Pluto shows the courts may make a lot of decisions that are going to make the collective unhappy, trying to keep power in their own hands, preach their own morals, Jupiter, preach their own values to everybody, power grabs. So that's what Jupiter, that's a really good example of Jupiter Pluto. We can do this in our own life too, where we have power. We have to watch this. What's the key? The key to Jupiter Pluto is you have to bring along that ambition, that power, that desire for reformation, to bring change, to bring transformation that you want for yourself, very ego-driven, to others too. If you are sharing the benefit of the power that Pluto can give you, then, and working for the benefit of all society and the way you touch it in your world, Jupiter, that's when this will work really good for you. And you can find yourself in a very powerful, strong position where you can open up tolerance, where you can redefine values, where you can bring out generosity, bring out good, positive energy, can bring in a lot of personal growth, a lot of exposure to new things, new people, new cultures. So you're going to see a lot of issues in society tied around law, religion, medicine, legal issues, other cultures, things like that. Going to really, in a society that's spinning like we have right now, we're going to see a lot of strong issues with that. So it's a very dangerous time, and that ties into the very last thing of that month. May 20th, Mars goes into Leo, and immediately, because it's in the first degree again, locks into a fixed T-square with that Jupiter-Pluto square. that is going to be a super triggering time period because Mars in Leo brings a lot of ego, especially to those in power, especially the old male energy that's been running the world for many thousands of years now. That, it's very so that, people who are feeling threatened, this is a time when they can be highly dangerous. This is where, the finger is on the button, so to speak, seriously. And they're so egotistically wrapped up in themselves that they actually may push the button. And you may do that in your life too. That Mars Pluto can get us in some very powerful power struggles with those in power. And it can end in like destructive, violent ways. This is what we want to use, this energy to transform, to drive ourselves to transform, to purge out what we don't need. But it's a very, very potently sensitive time on the world stage when we have leaders that are so egotistically driven that they can't separate themselves from their ideas and ambitions, and they're driving whole cultures and societies down a road with them. This is a very sensitive time. So very interesting energy going on. So that's what we got for May, guys. Glad I was able to get all this in this week, give us a little preview, but a great, great week this week. Like I said, building solid relationships, units that are working together, forming working units where everyone's individually putting in their best talent and giving and getting advice on what they do best and what they need. And then just that energy of Mars Uranus next weekend. Do something different, have some fun, bring in some new experience, new people, and use the energy that it gives you to make a big push forward on some of your stuff. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. It's a blog I have been doing for years. It was first just a written blog, and then it turned into a podcast, and now it's a video podcast on YouTube. So if you have a YouTube account, please become a follower and turn on your notifications, and you'll know when I do it. And free, please, right now, when you get off, someone in your contacts, turn the link on to. I'd really appreciate that. It is a podcast, though. I do mainly just talk to the camera, so it's available on all kinds of podcasts in audio format. You do not have to look at this video. Just look it up. Buzzsprout distributes it. Look up Astrological Winds channel. You'll find it out there. It's in the top 50% of podcasts now. Thank you very much for that. Also, if you have an Instagram account, I do not only post the link every week there, but I do extra stuff. I make extra comments during the week, usually a day or two. Like last week, I talked about the sun going into Taurus a little bit. So you want to check that out too. Astrological Winds channel on the Instagram. And if you have Facebook, I also do post it on Facebook. I do have a private account. I really only use it for astrology. So if you think you're going to interact with me socially, otherwise, probably not. But anyway, private friend me, Matthew, with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten, and get to Facebook usually once a week and go through those friend requests. And as long as it doesn't look like some weird computer generated one, I most likely will allow you to be a friend on that. Also, classes are available if you're into beginning astrology. I also do all kinds of readings. I am a professional astrologer. I have 7 years of schooling that I did over 20 years ago. I've been doing charts professionally for 20 plus years now. I'd love to do your chart, birth chart. If you haven't gotten it done by a professional astrologer, that's the first thing I recommend because you take it with you everywhere. Predictive reading every year around your birthday. Give it to yourself for your own birthday present because it helps you know the energy you're going to have for the next year to deal with. And you can be so much more helpful and understanding of what you're going through. Relationship astrology, children's astrology, relocation and astrolocality if you're looking for a new place to go. Fixed stars too. Hey guys, if you have done your birth chart and your predictive stuff and you're into astrology, That's the next one I recommend, is the fixed star reading for people. It really shows our deeper soul purpose and how our lives, make an impact here in different phases of our life. So, and if you're interested in a fixed star reading right now, I will give a discount on them too. So I will give about say $20-$30 off my normal price on a fixed star reading. So anyone interested in that, let me know, and I'll give you a real good price for the next couple weeks on that. Election charts. If you have something important going on, new business, marriage, want to get the best time, let me know. Also, horror, if you have a burning question you haven't had an answer to. And also, if you have a group, I do lectures, I do question and answer sessions, I do mini readings at your event, entertainment, classes even, just all these things. Best way to get me right now is my website is still in a temporarily unpublished zone, is to email me. It's matthuey823@gmail.com. matthuey823@gmail.com. All right, working unit week, right? And then an exciting weekend to bring in something new next weekend. I'll see you guys all next week. We've got that lunar eclipse, full moon, critical degree, 15 degrees of Scorpio. So that'll be a lot to look forward to next week. I'll see y'all then.